Hi, you're watching BQ Prime. We're here at the World Economic Forum's annual summit 2022, and this is officially day one. As you can see, the number of attendants here are picking up, and that bodes well for the conversations that are planned for the next few weeks. I have with me HCC's Ajit Gulabchand, fresh off a session with Ukraine's President Zelensky, here to talk about how he sees the world and what's going on in India with the economy and the big infrastructure push. Mr. Gulabchand, thank you so much for joining us here. I know you're fresh off the Zelensky session. Do you want to give us a sense of how you're assessing the world right now, specifically the political and economic challenges that most nations are facing?
Well, the world's been through quite a bit of disturbance since the first the financial crisis, followed by there was a climate crisis issue. Then there is the pandemic that really disrupted everything. And now you have a war in the Ukraine, which has caused enormous disruption.
Right.
All these activities have pushed more people into poverty. So the poorest are going to suffer the most as a result of all this. And I think that the world is barely able to tackle one that a new one arises. And I think this is what is concerning everybody here in Davos. Those who have come here are basic concern, how are we going to get out of this? How quickly can we get out of this?
Right.
So we can get onto the path of real growth. Nobody is predicting the next 2-3 years to be very good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of hope to say that we'll find a way out of it. But there's a lot of crisis, too much. And as a result of particularly, I've just come from Zelensky's talk, he received a standing ovation.
Yes.
Because I think he's been quite a warrior fighting this, the least expected man to be a warrior in this.
Absolutely.
And he's done that. And I think the whole idea is it's also becoming a war between dictatorship and democracy, which the First World War was about, but it produced at the end of it a lot of fake democrats. The Second World War settled the issue, and you then got a lot of democracy, both in Japan and in Germany, which represented the other side. So I think we are going through a turmoil in the world, very different reasons, all of them, and everybody is concerned with what are the solutions. You're getting many, many questions rather than you're getting the answers.
That's true.
However, the whole attempt is to get the right questions.
That's true. Yesterday I was schooled in that by Adam Tu, who's a well-known historian and economist.
Yeah.
And I was asking him questions, and he said, in effect, in a snapshot, this is how he said it, and I'm paraphrasing him. I was asking him questions about the new normal. I didn't use those words, but he kept saying, "Why are you expecting? I mean, why can't this be normal? Why should what the past is be normal?"
Well,
I think
he's saying so. In many ways, things don't repeat themselves.
That I know.
Something
in
or the
business
other,
and in
either-
markets, we'd like for things to repeat themselves
they
because
don't
then
change.
we
They
know how to
don't.
deal with them.
But
But
they
clearly,
don't.
historians are saying
and
that this
not
is a
only-
very different world.
And not only they don't repeat themselves, even if they do, the scale is so much higher
That's
that you've
true.
never faced it before.
That's true.
So obviously the
Now-
uncertainty has gripped everybody.
Yes, it is.
The
And
hope is that, yes, we have fought with so many things and we've come out on top. We will finally be all victorious. But for the time being, there is a concern.
Yes, the same uncertainties, external and some of them internal and of our own making, are plaguing the Indian economy as well. How do you assess the scope and potential for growth in the coming months, in the face of the pandemic-induced inequality, in the face of rising prices and inflation, which the government is taking measures to battle, but nonetheless, in the face of rising maybe interest rates, which will impact small and medium-sized businesses? How are you assessing the economic challenge awaiting us right now?
Yes, I think it's important to understand that India is facing a huge amount of challenge. And that challenge is that it has to confront itself a little bit. The pandemic has taken quite the wind out of India. You may not see it in some of the bigger companies which survive, or even if they just survived. They look that they're still standing, but there's a lot of medium-sized and small trade industry, and a lot of what has come to be called as the informal sector has
Yes.
suffered enormously.
Yes.
The, the poverty line has again gone up. There are more people now below poverty line than there were 2 years
And
ago.
that's a matter of debate nowadays, given the
No, no,
data is not clear.
it is all right about
But yes,
talking, but to say that we could come out through a financial crisis, we could come out through floods and everything, and then pandemic and the disruption of supply chain that has happened in the world, and we're still doing so grandly well, doesn't sound
of
okay.
course, yes.
It doesn't work. So I think that we need to confront that. Yes, there is a crisis. There is a serious matter that we have to deal with. We have dealt with death, disease, and the economic consequences of that. Now we have to deal with the disruption around the world that this war is causing. And we have to confront that. And once we confront that, we will find solutions. We look at our vaccination. We faltered at the beginning,
And then
but
we
then
pull
when we
through.
decided, we did it. So there is a lot of hope in Indian people. And even the governments in crisis do tend to behave a lot more decisively,
Responsibly.
responsibly.
All right.
And I think we're getting there. But there is a crisis now.
I
There
get
is
the
a
point.
disruption is serious. It is raising questions about, is globalization going to last, or is this now going to slowly go backwards?
Right. Mr. Gulabchand, since I have you here, and I'm not trying to make this very minute and oriented towards HCC, but it is also, as a large infrastructure company, a measure of how the economy is faring. And so I'll ask you this question. I know the last few years have been difficult. Do you see, and they've been difficult again for your, in the case of HCC, for external and internal reasons. There is now a pickup in the push towards infrastructure spending by the government. Are you seeing that reflect in orders? Are you seeing that reflect in large projects?
Yeah, I see that one thing that when such disruption happens and such pain comes about, one thing governments do is to try and spend on infrastructure
Sure.
so they can create immediate jobs as well as create a great catalyst for creating more jobs.
Yes.
And the multiplier is much,
Yes.
much higher. So in that context, their announcements and thrust on infrastructure projects bodes well for us.
Right.
So even if they land up doing only 40% of what they said they will, even then that is much bigger than what was existing. There are many other things that need to be properly redone, rethought. For example, the risks in the businesses are skewed.
Okay.
There's too much risk on the private sector that has been put in construction, because most of the government projects you're dealing with a dominant client, and they haven't been paying. They challenge.
haven't been paying.
Yeah, they challenge even if you win the arbitration case, they challenge it to the extent that it takes years. So in this context, we
Yeah.
have, for example, 13,000 crores worth of both arbitration awards in our favor and under arbitration, which is still
13,000 crores of
Yes,
money
yes, yes.
owed to HCC
Is
by
not yet being
various
paid.
government agencies
yes.
is being disputed,
Yes,
despite arbitral awards
being in favor.
being in favor
So
of your
half
company.
of them are arbitral awards in our favor. The others are underway, but they're on the same principles, so
Correct.
it should be similar. But the basic point is, so
So
delay.
how is the company supposed to work
That's what I'm
if
saying.
its working capital is
because
blocked?
because that's the point that I'm making. That whilst this is true, they need to understand how construction works. It is a continuous cash flow cycle.
Right.
There was a certain kind of feeling amongst the bureaucracy that this is all contractors' money and then you can pay any time you like. It's not true. Only 3 to 4% of the profit is the contractors.
Right.
The rest of it is the suppliers, the bankers,
Yes.
the subcontractors.
And you're in the midst of a loan restructuring.
Yeah. So
If this money had come to you on time, would you have needed that?
we're a debt-free company.
So if the government would have paid you for the government projects that
Yeah.
you've executed,
Yeah.
and let's assume only just half the amount, which is, let's say, 7,000
Yeah, yeah.
crores,
We're
because
debt-
those are
we're
arbitral
debt-free.
awards that you would have won,
We're debt-free.
you'd be debt-free.
Yes.
And instead, you're in the midst of a debt
Yes,
restructuring
yes.
that A, is crippling to your business, and B, requires lenders to either take a haircut or extend the tenure of their loans, etc.
Another is we also, in some respects, are going through a transition of how to deal with these things. Everybody rushed to the bankruptcy court. to find out that there's nothing happened.
Right.
So there are many areas in which we don't do things swiftly.
Mr. Gulabchand, just to press on this issue a little bit, I do know this has been a pending problem, the
Yeah.
payment of arbitral
Yeah,
awards.
yeah.
I do know that at various points when Mr. Jaitley was the finance minister, he exhorted the bureaucracy to move fast on this.
Yeah.
Then, Ms. Sitaraman has done the same as finance minister. Yet it doesn't seem to be playing out the way it ought to on ground.
It is not playing out that way for the simple reason they quietly add the thing that we are talking about. We will pay everything, but which is not disputed. And no government ever pays without creating a dispute. Then only they say I can't pay. So they create a dispute.
But could it be project overruns or delays on your end at HCC?
All that is netted, and the arbitrators have come to a conclusion. In most cases, in some of the critical cases, the umpire or the chairman of the arbitral tribunal is the former Chief Justice of India. So we are discussing here very serious. Look at what happened to the arbitrations that were done abroad. There also they tried the same thing.
Yes.
And they had to lose.
Yes.
So I think we need a reset on this.
And a big one, because we've been talking about this for years.
And understand that you cannot disturb the cash flow cycle.
So we fixed this problem of financing in roads, right, sir? Mr. Gadkari has fixed that through the TOT model and things like that.
BOT is not working today.
TOT.
What? That is what they call the HAM, H-A-M.
HAM, yes.
Which is nothing but a EPC contract with a buyer's credit. Okay.
Yes, which involves the government putting in some of the money.
But that's okay. But it's not a BOT. The whole idea of a BOT risk contract is dead for the time being. They're now working on how to revive it. For that, you need equity. You need a less skewed, more equitable risk distribution. For example, in BOT, they have something called the project cost, total project cost, which the government works out through its consultants or whatever. Then they say that in case something goes wrong and the contract is cancelled abroad, we will pay only this total project cost, in spite of the fact that it is woefully less than what the real costs are. And when the bid is made, along with the lenders consultants also confirming it, the bid is at much higher than this total project cost. So what does the lender say? Yes, it is higher. You must get the job. You get it, but the difference between total project cost and this cost will be on the company sponsor.
But why?
Nowhere in the world in a BOT is project finance. It has to be only recourse to the project. But we create this problem.
Then why bid? No, don't participate in government bids.
That's what has happened. Nobody is coming up for BOT. That's what has happened. You went through the whole cycle, and now I read in the newspaper that L&T is walking out of selling its road and power concession projects. So these are some of the problems which we need to fix. Everybody is ready, but we need to really come up with answers. This is what is fair. Get this done. In fact, even now I would request the government to say, forget you. Now that things are in the court, you can't take some decisions. You will be called names.
Right.
Please, can we all jointly go to the court and say, give us a quick decision?
Huh? Mr. Gulabchand, this feels like we could have been chatting in Davos 2018 kind of conversation, because this problem just refuses to go away.
I'm sorry to say that it is so. Even now, it took some time for the bankers to understand that this money is a mismatch of money is coming in and the money is to be paid. You have to pay the bank on the schedule. Because this is going to take time.
Yes.
So now we've got in a restructured form a different thing, that these claims which are not coming will be paid as and when they come.
Right.
And then you free the rest of the company to work normally.
Correct. So during your quarterly earnings, I did see the update on, I think you're very close to finishing out your loan restructuring.
Yeah.
And there is an SPV being created.
Yeah, I think,
So is there any further information?
But even that takes another month, 2 months, huh?
Yes, of course.
Now this is all agreed, decided, all boards approved, yet it takes a little time. This is our process.
Right.
This process itself is a big pain. We should understand that. This has to be gone through and this has to be done is a different story. But we must understand that things do happen faster elsewhere.
Sure, I understand that.
And that if you want to be part of that big economy, you'll have to do that.
Okay.
So I think one thing is good that the government has started understanding this. There is a desire to improve these things, as I can see now. They're not no longer shaking it as it's your headache. They are trying to find answers. Even the bankers and others who are very trigger happy in taking companies to bankruptcy court have realized it's better to resolve, because in a construction company, in bankruptcy court means nothing. Nobody gets anything.
That's true, especially if you're stuck with, dues
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
government, right?
And then you're giving the claims to the government free.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
So anyway, I think that we have been trying to convince the government, and there is Nirmala Sitharaman has been very conscious of the fact that there is pain, that we need to find answers. The finance team is, but construction is everywhere. No?
Yes.
Every ministry is involved. So this is not necessarily the consensus opinion of all the ministries.
Got that.
The finance ministry has understood the problem, but the rest are still true.
To come and fall in
But
line.
I think this will fall in place as we
Well,
go
let's
along.
hope so. I think
We
you
also
said
have
this
learned
in
some lessons.
2018, 19, 20.
We also have learned some lessons that once this is completed and we get back to changing, we'll be careful which projects to take.
Okay.
We would make sure that we try and resolve issues before they come to this pass.
Okay.
All these big amounts are because of interest.
Right.
But if at the time these delays occur, if you can settle it and make the client pay, they will be a lot cheaper and a lot faster. So we'll also learn how to deal with clients henceforth.
Yes, of course. I'm not at all absolving either the company or any construction company and its management of whatever role, I think that got played in the process. But this one particular issue of pending dues has plagued many players over the last several years.
Many have gone.
So
And
many
now
have
you are
gone.
there to fight
Yes,
it.
in fact, we were just doing stories on how many new players in infrastructure have emerged over the last 5 years.
And those new players are also, if you see them, the balance sheet in the last 3 years, those who have emerged 6 years ago have now started, their interest costs have started going up. Not because the interest rate has gone up.
Got it.
You see?
Yeah.
Because construction companies by definition are undercapitalized.
So if the government really wants to follow through on its big promise of an infrastructure push, as spelled out by the finance minister in the budget, then it's going to have to fix these issues post haste. Right?
Some resolving of these issues and having a better policy for how you will pay the claims, how you will do this. I think once this is done, you will find a substantive improvement in the speed of work.
Okay. All right. There are just a couple of more questions. I think there was also some data that recently was put out by the Ministry of Statistics on delayed projects. I'm going to run you by that. If you have a sense of what is causing this, this is just, 2 years of pandemic, shutdowns, closures, labor changes. Is that because I think they're saying out of 1579 projects, 425 reported cost overruns, as many as 664 projects were delayed. And of the 664 delayed projects, about 115 projects have been delayed for 61 months and above. That's 5 years and more. This is the government data that I'm putting to you, so it cannot be disputed by the government.
Even if it is wrong, it's little here or there.
Is it pandemic related? Is it labor changes related?
No. It is the way we work.
Okay.
We've got to improve the way we work and take our decisions. Number two, pandemic has caused a problem which you have not addressed. Companies were literally left to find them. In fact, some of the government officers say it is, what do you call it's act of God for you, it's act of God for us also.
Yes.
But they don't force majeure. But just said the owner of the facility that you're getting constructed has to bear that cost.
Yes.
If for some reason that facility is stopped due to a war and it is to restart 7 years from now, you don't expect contractors to provide you at the old cost. It is given that the owner has to bear.
So it's differences on cost and revaluations of project cost that has caused some of the delays.
Then sometimes the planning work, original design work, etc., has also been poorly done.
Yes.
Some of it cannot be done that fully. So you must, on the road while you are doing it, You come across problems, you must solve them quickly.
Right.
And not say it's not there in the contract, it's not here. It was designed not to be there in the contract. Take a deep tunnel of 14 kilometers if you're doing to the Himalaya. You can't do a soil investigation of that whole tunnel. And you can't put it entirely on the contractor. The cost would be enormous. So you do 100 meters on either side. And then you say, if you come across worse rock, we will pay more. This is how it is done all over the world. Now that pay more in India does not happen
I get that.
quickly.
Okay.
It is.
In a rising interest rate scenario, we've just heard from the RBI governor today. He was speaking with CNBC TV 18, and he mentioned more rate hikes to come. No brainer there. How will that impact businesses like yours
All
already
businesses
with
will
legacy
get
issues?
All the legacy issues will sort out through the RP.
Okay.
The issue is not that. The issue is that even though the increases come, these increases are meant to be paid by the owner of the project. Government should also come up with a policy. How are you going to reimburse this? For example,
So if you're
even an
saying if rates are
escalation-
going up in the
Yeah.
economy, they
You
should
have
be
an escalation
factored
clause.
into project
Yeah,
cost
yeah.
automatically.
Yeah. In fact, if you have an escalation formula, there are weightages
But is
given.
this not part of project contracts already,
yes.
saying, any change in...
That's what I was explaining to you. That the moment this happens, when you are there, say, the weightage given to each commodity. Now, when the price goes through the roof, that weightage is not sufficient to reimburse.
Okay.
Then you have, for example, if it's based on labor, dearness allowance, escalation of labor, and if you give 3 times the minimum wage increase, then it goes out of whack. Then who's going to pay that? Because of the fear of decision making, all these decisions become difficult to take.
So you're cautioning that even new projects that are underway, forget past
Are in the
projects,
danger
disputed
of facing
projects.
this problem. They must side by side improve the way we are all going to operate the construction of those projects, both from the client side and the contractor side. This is going to be done.
I had many more questions, but time is short. So I'll ask you one last one. It might seem like I've jumped from the conversation we're having to a completely
you can
different
ask
issue.
this to be in Bombay also.
I could ask you in Bombay as well, but I have you here. You're in a mood of candor,
And if
so
you
I'll
want
put it to you.
If you're talking about an exotic village, you can take the backdrop of the Bandra Worli ceiling.
Which was built by you. Have you got your full payment for that? There was some outstanding at one time.
We settled.
You settled? Okay. But you built a good piece of infrastructure for the city. So, I think in the last decade, Mr. Gulabchand and more, you attempted to build in Lavasa what in some ways is part of the smart city program now in India, right? So in that ways, you were ahead of the curve. But there were political issues, there were allegations of political favoritism, there were financing issues, there were demand issues. You weren't able to sell as much of it as you wanted. What was the lesson in trying to build that first private city sort of structure?
Let me tell you, there have been several court rulings on PILs which answer all these questions.
I'm not dealing with the allegations, just the lesson.
They've not been answered. These allegations are untrue.
Yes, it will take us about half an hour to deal with each one of these in detail.
No, we are not going into it.
Yeah, so just the lesson.
There's sufficient evidence that it can be shown. That's all. Now, I think politics must require some understanding that if something is happening in the interest of the country, for example, we need smart cities. This was the first model that India had of creating a smart city. But Sonia Gandhi stopped it. She is the reason for killing this project. And thereafter, even though I know Arun Jaitley said that they must be helped, Devendra Fadnavis did nothing. So for the sins of commission of one government and sins of commission of the other, it did not happen.
But you're only blaming the government on this. That's why I didn't want to get into the allegation and the finger pointing.
I'm not saying
just lesson.
But this is the reason. The lesson is
don't trust either party.
No, till you have signed everything and government has given you, don't do it. Okay. Because governments change their mind. And then their politics is stronger than the reality of the necessity. Such a large migration taking place, we know this. We want smarter cities so that you can live better. Don't tell me it is all in the box just now. Why isn't Maharashtra government doing anything about it? Again, same fear. They'll say, oh, somebody is wrong. But this is what happens. This is really what happens. Once it becomes this, it becomes a hot potato. Nobody wants to touch it.
Okay, speaking of hot potatoes, you made allegations against Sonia Gandhi and then Mr. Jaitley and Mr. Fadnavis.
I did not say Jaitley.
Mr. Fadnavis.
I said Mr.
I just want to
Fadnavis.
disclaim that I said it. I was saying it tongue in cheek.
What?
I was saying it tongue in cheek
No,
to
don't
wrap
say
it up.
Jaitley. I didn't. He helped.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. So there were politicians that stood in the way, according to you.
Yes.
Okay.
They're politics.
Politics stood in the way.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sure there's a longer story there. We'll return to Mumbai, find
We can have a
the
longer
Sea Link as a
story. Yeah,
picturesque conversation. And thank you very much for your time, Mr.
Thank you.
Gulabchand, and for the perspective of both the world and India's infrastructure push.
When I said Sonia Gandhi, please listen to Jayati Natarajan's interview and the letter she wrote for her resignation.